Okay, so as promised, I just created a video about a 3D camera move in Blender 2.8 with some grease pencil over the top of it. And at the end, I sort of mentioned what I'm going to explain in this video. Okay, so I don't think this is in the official builds of OPENTOONZ, but I will say that this version that I'm using, which is, hello, where's the about screen? 1.3 built September 16th. So in order to get at this, you have to download the nightly builds of OPENTOONZ. And so why don't we take a quick look over yonder and see where you would find that. You would go to, I think you go here to opentoonz.github.io, and then let me see here. Let's just click OPENTOONZ to download, and I'll go here. Nope, that's not it. That's not it. So let's try a different strategy. Let's go OPENTOONZ nightly builds and see if we get right back to it. So the version that I'm using, yeah, here we go. Nightly build. So there you go. Usually this, okay, so this says it was built on November 16th, but I don't think that's, I don't know that that's correct. So I wish I could show you that, you know, instantly right where to find it, but you see these dates. I am pretty sure that this date is not correct. Well, yeah, of course it isn't. Right here it says nightly build 10/7. So I'm looking straight at it, and you're screaming at your computer screen right now, going, "Dave, it's right in front of you. It says 10/07." Okay, so point of the story is that the nightly build of OPENTOONZ that I downloaded, obviously on September 16th, has been very, very stable, no problems, as problem-free as any build of OPENTOONZ I've used, so I've got no reason to complain about it at this point. So what I was going to bring up is something that's been that I've wanted to see in OPENTOONZ for quite a long time, and that is to be able to do fill operations in a toonz or in a raster level. So now let's just explain the difference between a toonz raster level and a raster level. Okay. In fact, I'll make this complete. I'm going to try to go quickly here so we don't waste a lot of time. There are 3 types of levels in OPENTOONZ. And by the way, if you go to the level menu and you go new, then you can pick one of these types of levels. It includes a note level, but I'm not going to get into that. That's just for keeping notes for yourself. So 3 types of levels, and if you do the default installation, you will not see these little icons. Well, these icons are kind of useful, I must say. So I'm going to say go to your preferences, and is it under drawing? Well, let's just find it right now. X sheet? Yes, right here. You go to the X sheet option in your preferences, and you go show toolbar in the X sheet, and see that? Super useful. You definitely want that toolbar in there. So my advice is just do it. Okay, so in 30 seconds, here's what a vector level is. A vector level is simply drawing with vectors. So that means if I draw a line, I can actually then hit the C key and go in and I can edit that line after the fact. Now if you're a newbie, you're going to think that's the coolest thing in the world, because that means I can draw my picture and then I can edit it, I can fix it up. And you're correct. In theory, it's pretty cool. What I've found is in practice, for reasons I won't even try to get into in this video, it can be on the clunky side. So proceed with caution and keep your expectations realistic as far as toonz vector levels. They are useful, and there's some cool things you can do with them if you want to go down this road. The basic advantage to vector levels is that you have snapping. So if I want to, I don't know if you can see this, but if I get really close, you see how it snaps to it? Okay, so that's unique to vector levels because these are vector objects in the interface. Okay, so now I can go like this, and obviously I'm drawing something that's pretty much nothing, but okay. And you see that the lines snap. Now you say, well, but what if I don't want those really simplistic flash style vector outlines? Okay. Number one, there's two things you can do in OpenToonz that are useful in that regard. One is the pump tool. And the pump tool actually lets you do this after the fact as well. You can go in and sort of adjust line thickness. Okay. And if you use the selection tool to select a piece of it, if I'm not mistaken, you also can do the same thing here. Yes, you can pump it up and pump it down here when you've got it selected with the S key, which is the selection tool. Okay, so that's kind of cool. Well, the other thing you can do about the visual look of vector levels is you can go in here to this tab that's called Vector, and if you go down here and by the way, there's all kinds of effects related to vector levels that I have not even begun to grok. So I know there's some really cool stuff here, but for my purposes, I haven't really needed to go too deep with it. But this is useful if you really insist on using vector levels. Then check this out, because what this does is it changes the way these lines render when you do your actual preview. So if I click this, you can see. And by the way, if I'm not mistaken, don't quote me on this one, but if I'm not mistaken, in the past, in earlier versions of OpenToonz, if you selected these brushes, these brush effects for a vector level, you would not see it unless you went into final preview mode. It appears now in these recent builds that in point of fact you can see these in the the fast preview. So that's pretty cool. So what's the problem with vector levels? Normally the main problem with vector levels is they kind of suck when it comes to doing fills. So in other words, Control C, Control V, I'm going to go ahead and get rid of this vector effect. So I have just a plain old color, and then just let me add a couple colors to the scene, and let's just do a couple fill operations. Now it could be that this is something they've improved. So that was pretty painless and everything filled nicely. What you find is you can move things around, and then the fills get broken and they don't like refix themselves and stuff like that. So it's not that it doesn't work, it's just take this capability with a grain of salt and know that the bane of vector levels in OpenToonz is basically fill operations. And I can't really demonstrate it here because I didn't want to take the time to set up a scene where it shows you what can go wrong. But if you want to trust me on this, the fill operations are a little bit hokey sometimes. And here you can see you've got a little bit of an artifact there. And actually this is a great example, because if I hit Alt F, okay, so now what OpenToonz is telling me here, and I don't know if I can see it unless I turn the vector effect off, but what OpenToonz is telling me right now is that this is not a closed shape. Okay, so now it's not going to do me any good, I don't think, to just cross over here. So yeah, I mean, that's kind of weird. So you can see what OpenToonz is doing. There, it just changed color. So your mileage may vary. See, now it wants to fill, but you still have this artifact. So I don't want to belabor vector levels. I just wanted to cover them since I'm talking about the differences between levels. Basically, with vector levels, you can create real sharp, scalable vector imagery that looks sharp at any scale. And so again, especially for newbies, that's going to be really appealing. And then when you get into doing more complex, or I'll sound snarky when I say this, but when you get into doing real work that's not just trivial, you'll find out that you're going to bump into these limitations. And like me, you may find that you prefer to stay away from vector levels. But a lot of people use them, a lot of people like them. So there you go. The coloring operations on vector levels work like this. Every single color has to be a palette entry, and you can change the colors after the fact. So the benefit is you can change them after the fact. The downside is every time you want to change colors, you got to jump between palette entries. Okay, why did I mention that? Well, because the toonz raster level is the same way. So a toonz raster level is the most mature type of level in OpenToonz. Whoops, didn't mean to do that. Okay, and basically here's what you get with a toonz raster level. Number one, the native brush to the toonz raster level is pretty good, pretty flexible. Okay, So I'm going to go ahead and create a character right now. And I'll just hit my eraser right here to give this dude an ear. And we'll give him real simple Matt Groening type eyes. And okay, so here's our character. We don't get the snapping. Okay, so that means that if I want to have a closed shape, I've got to be careful to make sure it's a closed shape, because it's not going to snap like it will with a vector. Okay, I can see when I hit, what I'm doing is I've got a hotkey tied to this, fill check. Alt F for me is fill check. You probably don't have that hotkey because I set that up myself. All right. So now, what you'll find is a toonz raster level is very reliable when it comes to doing fill operations. It's not 100% foolproof. In fact, something that the great Darren T, who you should be subscribed to, told me not too long ago is that the fill operations have this little option, which means that actually a good example would probably be his mouth. So let's put a darker color in his mouth. And now if I click, let's see. It did a really good job, unfortunately. So let's try to make OPENTOONZ' job a little tougher here so you can see what problem you might run into. I'm going to erase this, and then I'm going to go like this and make this really small area like that. Okay? And you'll see in a moment why I'm doing that. So now I'm going to go ahead and fill these like so. And now, okay, see that? Right there. It didn't fill all the way. And in many cases, it doesn't matter, because when you go to normal size that it would show up on a TV screen, the flaw might be so small that it wouldn't even matter. You wouldn't care. But in this case, you would, because you can see it. Well, it turns out that when you do your fill operation, if you hit the shift key, so I'm hitting F for fill and I hit the shift key, and let's just hit undo shift. Okay. It's not perfect, actually. In this case, the max is set to 8.14, so let's just put it up all the way and see what happens. So now if I hit shift and do the fill operation, okay, so there it filled it up completely. So getting into those cracks and crevices with OPENTOONZ is greatly aided by using this range. And you can just play with it and see what happens. So for most animation work, if you're doing real animation work, probably you're going to be dealing with toonz raster levels most of the time, I would say, in OPENTOONZ. And again, just like vector levels, the advantage here is you can change the colors after the fact, because OPENTOONZ is keeping track in its own memory and in its own system of what what all those colors are. So that's how the palette works. Now the toonz, or the standard raster level, and by the way, I'll just tell you this too, as long as I'm here and I'm explaining things. When you create multiple drawings, so let's go ahead and go like this, and let's make a quick modification of this guy. All right, so I'm hitting Control here with the selection tool, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to go like this, and then I'm going to hit select, and I'm going to go like that and give this guy an open mouth. Okay, so now let's just fix this up really, really fast. Okay, so we're going to go boom, boom. I know it looks pretty much stupid, but that's okay. We're just trying to do a little demonstration here. We'll just erase that, and then we're going to correct it with the B key for brush. And then if you're having trouble filling, you can always hit the V key. I think that's the native hotkey. And you can actually hand paint areas. And if this is set to areas instead of lines, or lines and areas, then you can hand paint little corrections. Okay, so here you might actually go like this and then hit the F key to finish filling it in. Okay, obviously we have a little tiny flaw right there, but I'm not going to address that right now. Okay, so now our guy has a little animation. Okay, so what else was? Oh, I was going to also mention that just as long as we're talking about the paintbrush tool, and this is also doable with the fill tool. So if I hit the fill tool, I can fill areas, but I can also fill lines, or I can fill both. Okay, by default, you're usually filling an area. But what if you wanted the outline around his eyes to be a slightly different color? let's say. Let's say you want it to be just for kicks and giggles instead of creating a new palette entry. I'm just going to use this color. Okay, I can hit the V key to use the paintbrush, but I'm going to color lines instead of areas. Okay, and this is the kind of stuff that you probably don't see a ton of when you're looking around on YouTube, but this is the kind of stuff that really makes OPENTOONZ a really nice animation software to work with. Just little features like that, you know, that kind of make your job easier in different ways. So, okay, so now what about these raster levels? The last thing I'm going to say is that the toonz raster level creates a file on your disk that includes all these drawings in a single file, and that is a TLV file. Okay, and OPENTOONZ by default saves those TLV files wherever you create your OPENTOONZ project. OPENTOONZ is going to create a folder called Drawings, and in the Drawings folder you're going to find TLV files that represent each of the levels that are on your in your scene. Now, if I delete this level out of, if I've saved this, which in this case I haven't, but if I take and I delete this out of my scene, it does not get deleted off the hard drive, because you know what? You might want to use it later. Maybe this is a level that consists of nothing but mouth shapes, okay, and his head is a separate level. And now you might want to bring in this mouth shape 100 times for 100 different scenes to do lip sync for different shots. Okay, so the TLV file is still saved on your hard drive. And if you really want control over it, go level, save level as, and give it a specific name. Okay, so now the question was, what about raster levels? Well, a raster level is a plain old painting. You probably understand. I'm going to do this. I'm going to tell you one more thing. In the toonz raster levels, if you're not satisfied with this simple brush, you can use all the My Paint brushes. Okay? I'm not going to show that right now because I'm about to show it on the raster level, because both of them can use the My Paint brushes. So in what's called a raster level, that's just a sequence of bitmap images. So if I again, for simplicity, I'm just going to grab whatever this is and hit the B key to use my brush. Okay, it happens to be a black brush. Okay, so think of it this way. A raster level is what you'd be doing if you were in GIMP or Krita or Photoshop. You just want to paint. Okay, so in other words, like in this raster level, if I grab this oil paint brush, I can just start painting. And if I want to change colors, I just change colors. Right? Just like that. Okay, so for plain old painting in OPENTOONZ, you have to use a raster level. Okay? So the disadvantage to that is you cannot change the colors after the fact, because each of these palette entries, essentially, it's just like your normal paint programs like Krita or GIMP or whatever. Okay? Each quote-unquote palette entry just refers to a brush. And the color can change to whatever you change it to as you're working. So now, the great shortcoming of the toonz, okay, I have to say this properly, because this is a toonz raster level. This is a raster level. Raster level, toonz raster level. So I was about to say the shortcoming of a toonz raster level, but that would be confusing, of an OPENTOONZ raster level, is that you can't do fill operations. Okay, so if I come back here and I go B key and I draw a shape, and I say, well, now I want to fill that with some color. Well, so I just change my color, and this is how you would do it if you were in Krita, if you were doing everything on a single layer. And you just hit the fill tool and fill it. Well, guess what? It turns out that in recent builds of OPENTOONZ, you do have the ability to do fill operations in a raster level. Now in this case, I'm going to hit the shift key, because what you'll find is that the raster level fill operations are a little more icky. See? You see the ickiness? Okay. Doesn't matter really, because you can just hit shift, and let me hit undo, let me hit shift, so the max is 15, so I'm going to hit shift, and now, very nice, very clean, very tight. So why would you want to do that as opposed to the toonz raster level? Well, the main reason would be, I suppose, one reason would be, what if you want to do stuff like this? What if you just want to interactively start doodling this thing and making tweaks to it and just really interactively, all on a single layer, just kind of do what you do, right? Okay, there's an example of what I was talking about. I'm going to hit Shift. Oh, and that's too strong. So there you go. I'm going to split the difference. There we go. It worked perfectly. Go up here. Okay. Back to black. So if you want to keep your work really concise on a single layer, and you want to just hit the R key to sample a color and then maybe make it a little darker and just kind of make tweaks as you go. So we're kind of mid-drawing, I suppose, a puppy dog or something here. All right. All right. So you'll notice that the fill operation doesn't have any options. If I go over here and hit the fill tool, I can do a freehand filling, which means that it would fill this shape by me drawing a circle around it like this. Okay. Another option is frame range, which allows me to say, okay, if I'm going to color this guy's eyes yellow, if I turn on frame range, then I can start on this frame, circle this, all right, circle that. Oh, nothing happened. Well, that's because you go to your last frame and circle it again, and now what it does is it goes through and it does the fill on every single frame in between. Okay? So the fill operations are way more powerful in the toonz raster levels, but the plain old raster level does give you this flexibility to just get in there and paint and have fun with it, right? And again, the R key is if you want to just sample a color, which I actually find I do kind of a lot, really. So, but regular painting, that's what raster levels are for. And I've done a lot of background paintings and whatnot using OPENTOONZ raster levels. It's confusing terminology. Now, on your hard drive, if you go ahead and add a bunch of keys, so let's just do this. Let's make a duplicate of this drawing, D key, and then grab this, and let's just stretch it out a bit, okay? Just so there's some animation, okay? Now, if I save this project, I'm not going to do this because I don't really want to clutter up my hard drive with this doodling around. But if I were to save this, this does not get saved as a single image. What happens is, and maybe if I do it this way, I can go save level as. Gosh, I don't want to go down that road. If you go save all, then OPENTOONZ saves the scene file, which is just a simple text file that's referring to all these pictures and stuff that are on your hard drive. What actually gets saved with a raster level is a sequence of individual either ping images or TIFF images, okay, which you probably know what those are, but and it saves them as a sequence kind of like this. So this would be saved as, let's just say, dog.0000.ping or .tiff, depending on what your preferences are, if you set your preferences to save as ping or save as tiff. Okay, and then the next one would be, so that would be this image. This image would be dog.0001.ping. Now that's kind of interesting for you because it just so happens that if you use Krita, if you like drawing in Krita, Krita saves image sequences of its animation natively in this exact same format with 4 digits, which means that any animated stuff you export out, or that you render, let's say, out of Krita, you can take the first image in the sequence on your hard drive, drag it here, and OPENTOONZ will load the whole sequence. So that's something you might want to be aware of. Okay? So the way I think of it is that for most animation work, it's going to be toonz raster levels. But if I want the flexibility to do more painting and get a delicate gradation of color within my character or something like that, then I'm probably going to be using a plain old raster level. Now, to be fair, you could combine the two in essence. Let's just go ahead and delete this level. Okay, you could combine the two by adding a raster level here, and then actually take your oil paint and then say, well, I'm just going to sample this color. Okay, and then go a little darker. And now on a separate level, I can go ahead and add some shading, to my character, if that's what I want to do. Okay. You say, well, wait, Dave, that doesn't really work, does it? Because what about if I do some animation? Sorry. What if I do some animation on the other level? So what if I animate my guy? So let's hit the Animate Tool, and just for fun, we'll use the shear option. Okay, and so we'll just go like this. This is kind of stupid, but you can see. You say, wow, it didn't work, Dave, because the shadow doesn't travel with him. Well, that's because you don't realize that if you simply hit F3 and open up your schematic, and then you take that new level you just created and patch it through, so it's essentially the child of this level, then guess what? It inherits all its animation. And what you were saying you couldn't do all of a sudden works. Now, obviously, we have a little problem there on the second frame of this, but so in that, you'll find that to be the case in OpenTooNz. Pretty much everything can be connected to everything to a ridiculous degree, even to the point where if I want to delete this animation data and I wanted to use the plastic tool, let's use the plastic tool. So I hit the X key, and it's going to create a mesh. Okay, now we don't need a mesh that dense, but let's create a mesh that's kind of a little looser. And then I'm going to do this really fast. I'm just going to go boom, 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 boom. Okay? And now I'm going to check. Yeah, I got a couple doubles here. It's because I use my stylus instead of my, my mouse for that. So it kind of double banged it. So I'm going to actually I'm going to go like that as well. Okay, why did I do that? Well, I'm glad you asked. Okay. Well, now, if I go into animate mode, look at this. Oh, that's cool. Can wiggle his ears and come down here and actually say, well, yeah, we're going to wiggle his ears a lot. You say, well, I want to stretch something. I don't want to just rotate it. Well, okay, turn this off. Turn off keep distance. Now you can stretch it as much as you want. Okay? So now, ta-da! Okay, so now one question you might ask, by the way, is why did his mouth disappear? Well, the mesh that was generated was based on this drawing, and this drawing sticks outside of the mesh area. So if you want to get into this sort of a situation, you got to do a little bit more planning. But you can deal with it. You just go to the plastic tool, and you go into edit mesh mode. And in this case, what you do is you take some of these points and stretch them down here, like so. Okay, so now, see, now his mouth doesn't fall outside the range of the mesh. And you say, well, but David, you still have the problem of this isn't following along. Now you're having all this cool deformation, but the other level isn't following it. Well, yeah, but that's because you haven't pressed F3 and gone into your schematic and done the same darn thing I said earlier. Now, actually, what you really want to do here is probably map this directly to here. Okay? And look, now the shadow is being deformed as well. Maybe it was a minute ago. I don't know. I don't think it would. Let me see here. Let's just try this. So let's take column 3 and patch it through column 1, then through the plastic tool, and see if that works. Yeah, it doesn't work. So you need to take any other levels that you want to map through the plastic tool and make them all go through it. Okay? And now you say, well, yeah, but I have one problem, Dave. I want him to have a hat. Okay? Now this is where it gets really interesting, actually, as far as the plastic tool is concerned. All right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a raster level, and I'm going to give this guy a stupid-looking hat. So I'm just going to take whatever brush happens to be on offer at the moment and just make a hat, okay? Because I'm in a hurry. Really, guys, I really can draw. I really can cartoon. But like, I'm really trying to hurry here. Okay, the only reason I'm showing you this is so you can see something about the plastic tool. Once you start fiddling around with all the deformations and stuff, there's something about it that you probably didn't consider, which is this. If you go here and hit the X key, and you let's go into create skeleton mode, because you can always modify the skeleton after the fact. Okay, so now what I'm going to do, this is going to be interesting. I'm going to go boom, boom, boom. Now you notice this is vertex number 13. See that? Okay. Well, now in my schematic, I could map this through the plastic tool. And if I do that, then the hat theoretically would be deformed. But in this case, because the mesh doesn't come up and cover the hat disappeared. Right? We already explained that. Well, here's what you can do that you didn't know you could do. Take this level with the hat and plug it into a different node here on the plastic tool. Okay? So they're all going into B. Everything that's being deformed is going into B, and I'm going to go into A. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to scroll this up until it gets to number 13. I believe that's correct. Maybe that is not correct. Okay, I'm going to double check this. So here, it says it's number 13. So that's fine. Right now it's patched to 13, and there it is. So I need to kind of offset this a little bit. But let's go like this. So let's hit the Animate Tool. And I'm going to go into position mode, and I'm just going to bring this back down to where I want it. Okay, so now when I go in here to the plastic tool, let's go ahead and get rid of this. Because I parented it to number 13, what happens is it's just parented to the bone. It's not going to get deformed. Okay? So effectively, this can operate independently. This could be his hand. This could be whatever you want it to be. And it's completely separated from the rest of the mesh or the rest of the bone system that's deforming the mesh, that's deforming the drawing. Get it? Bone deforms mesh, mesh deforms drawing. Well, if you parent another level to just one of the bones, which you determine which one by looking at this number right here. So this is number 12, which is kind of stupid because it's 12 but vertex 11. So it's confusing, 11 vertex 10. Okay? Because 1 is the root, and I'm not sure why they... It's a little bit of a strange way they did the numbering, but the upshot is, if you go ahead and create those offsets and whatnot the way I did, so I say, okay, well, what I really want to do is make the hat move with his head. Okay, here's how I'll do it. Let's parent it to number 8. That's fine. So we hit F3, and let's just change this. Let's just change this to number 8. Okay, there it is. Okay, and then we'll hit Z. And as long as we're here and we're building the skeleton, let's just delete these. We don't need them anymore. Goodbye. Okay, so now the hat is parented to number 8, but it's not going to be deformed. So now I'm going to go to this layer, and I'm going to hit the Animate Tool again, and I'm just going to adjust the hat and put it back where I want it. Okay, so now see what happens? Now bone number 8 is moving the hat, but it doesn't get deformed. Okay, so now you learned about what you can do with the plastic tool. That pretty much, you know, if I think about it, that pretty much sums up most of the things you can do with the plastic tool. But now you know the difference between vector levels, toonz raster levels, and plain old raster levels. Use plain old raster levels for just having fun painting. Use toonz raster levels when you know you might want to tweak some colors after the fact, and you just kind of want the most stable and mature OpenToonz level type for doing good old-fashioned animation. And by the way, also aided by the fact that this creates a quote-unquote .tlv file that you can share with your friends if you want to do something collaborative. Okay? And with that, I am going to call it a day. As you guys know, there will be more later.